So hello, I'm Randy Kearns. I'm your professor again for many of you, actually I think all of you, and we'll be going over health technology and health informatics. It is important to be sure and touch on both the basic elements of what's the difference. Information management is certainly a very important skill set to have. And technology management is also an important skill set to have. With information management, probably the best way to think about that is today in most hospitals, the most expensive investment that a hospital will make today will be in their information technology. What it costs to set up and operate an EHR, their electronic health record. Let me also be sure and comment on one other thing. First of all, I have a camera that's right here in front of me. I also have a monitor here, a monitor here. Let me let the student in, a monitor here and a monitor here. So if I recognize on that side of the monitor, it's important for me to connect with you, and I'm trying to be sure that I look at the camera because that's an important part of the connection, but also understand that sometimes when I'm looking off, what I'm doing is looking at other monitors of either something that I want to show you or something that's coming up next. So anyway, with that said, again, let's get back to technology versus informatics. So with informatics, what I'm really talking about is managing the information. And it could be from quality standpoint, it could be patient information, it could be patient accounts, it could be the way that we manage the finance side of information. But the big picture is information management helps us in so many ways, and the better you're able to manage that information, the more likely you are to have employability in various roles, I guess is one way to put that. Another piece of that is the technology side. One reason why healthcare is as expensive as it is in the American model is we have bought a lot of technology, and we've invested a lot of money in technology that exists in a lot of different hospitals. And I can't always tell you that's a great idea. I can just tell you that's what we've done. And I can say that sometimes there's, there's a challenge with that. And the challenge is, again, how much money we spend. Our per capita expenditure for healthcare in America is almost, is more than half again, more than what anybody else spends. So you would think with that, we could buy ourselves the best healthcare, and we would live the longest lives, and we would have the healthiest lives. And that's not true. It just means that it's very expensive, and technology is one of those reasons why it's very expensive. And we will talk about technology later on as we get into this. But again, when you think about the 3020 class, the two things I want you to think about includes the informatics, the software side of this, and the technology, which is to some extent the hardware side of this. So again, as we move forward, those are key pieces I want to be sure to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me, let's see, let's do this so that you're seeing what I'm seeing. Let's go back to here. One other thing that I'll be sure and point out, the difference between what you're seeing now in Moodle than what you saw either this summer or what you saw last spring is we've migrated Moodle to a different server, and I've used Moodle at several different locations. Moodle has a lot of user interface that allows you to set up different settings. So it may look a little bit different than what you're used to seeing for Moodle. If it does, just understand all of the functionality is there that you saw before. In fact, there's actually more functionality than what you saw before, but I do want you to understand that all of the functionality that you had before you still have with this. You just may have to dig around a little bit to find it. So let me click on the class that you're in, health informatics or health information technology. And before I scroll too far, I do want to note to you that there's one purchase in this class, and the one purchase is to buy membership in the Healthcare Financial Management Association, and to buy the student membership. Now, to be able to buy the student membership, you have to use your uno.edu email address. A regular membership is $450. Don't spend $450. A student membership is $50, about half the cost of a typical textbook. When you buy the student membership, what that gives you access to is a certification that we're going to include in this course. And that certification is the Certified Specialist Business Intelligence. And we'll pick up part of that in early October. But again, let's be sure that we discuss the order. Be sure and buy the student membership first. It will cost $50, nothing more. Once you buy the student membership, you can take all of the certifications, or all but one, for no additional cost. If you just log on to the HFMA website and try to take this course, this certification, without buying the student membership, the course will cost $399. Don't do that, okay? So the order is take the student membership, and once you have the student membership, you will be able to take the course for free, or you'll be able to take the certification for free. And again, the certification, there's several other certifications you can also take as well that I think would be helpful, but I don't know what your life is like. And if you have extra time, I would encourage you to do it. If you have all the things you can possibly do right now, I would tell you that to do it later on when you do have some time. The membership is good for 1 year, so once the semester is over, you still have some time to take other certifications if you want to. And again, those certifications will help your resume. They will help make you look better when you're trying to compete with other people for a job. So I think it's important. It will be an important part of this course, and it will be also, for that matter, an important part of your future. So each Tuesday at 6 o'clock, we'll do exactly this. And if you can log on, that's great. If you can't, again, I'll record it and post it generally the next day. I would encourage you to at least review the basic overview of what's here. And then let's move down to, as far as the Zoom connection goes, it will be the same address each week that you clicked on tonight to get here tonight. And if you have any trouble at all with the passcode is HCM3020, the course number for this course. So let's look at this folder just a minute. So this is for last week. The terms that are in blue are the ones that I would encourage you to know something more about. The ones in black are there. They're kind of important, but more than likely you won't see them later on this semester. You will see them at some point in healthcare. All of these terms are related to health information management or health information technology, but the ones in blue are the ones that you will see again this semester. So I would pay particular attention to the ones in blue. We will not cover all of them this week or next week or the next week, okay? But over the period of the semester, you will see all of the ones in blue, okay? And I think that was, let's let Brianna in the class. I do have a couple of links that I would encourage you to review. It talks about the EHR market. The EHR is the electronic health record. Again, the most expensive purchase that's been made at most hospital systems in the last 5 years, at least the last 10 years, has been buying an EHR. And an EHR that is most common primarily in the New Orleans market is an EHR called Epic. I'm going to cover just the basic overview of what you may see with Epic tonight. But if you wind up in an Ochsner hospital, they use Epic. If you wind up in a hospital like University Medical Center or LCMC Health, they use Epic. There's an HCA hospital in town, and they use Meditech, and then there's a VA hospital, and all of the VA hospitals use Cerner. But the largest, the one that has the most market share is the Microsoft, so to speak, of the electronic health record is Epic. And then the, I don't know if I would call it the Apple, but certainly the one that doesn't have as much market share but does have a loyal following is Cerner. And we'll talk about those later on. And then we'll also talk about a couple of rules or laws as they relate to healthcare technology. And then I've got that particular presentation pulled up. We'll look at it. And then let's see. Let's look at electronic health records with a focus on Cerner and Epic. These are the terms that we'll primarily go over tonight. And then the quiz reflects the information from last week and this week. So let's go to those two presentations. Let's see, let's look at the first one. Let me go back to Zoom and check on what you can see. So let me stop sharing that, and then let me share this screen to be sure you're seeing what I want you to see. So first of all, if somebody will put in the chat, can you see health information or healthcare informatics fall of 2020 HCM3020? Somebody will put that in the chat. Yes, you do, or no, you don't. Yes. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So if I look through, well, so one thing that I try to remind people also is, why do you want to be involved in healthcare? At least from the American perspective, today healthcare has more employees than any other industry or any other business. I'm not sure what that says about us, given the fact that we're still not, as I say, the healthiest country in the world, but we spend a lot of money on healthcare and we employ a lot of people. So if I'm your age and I'm looking for a job, having some type of an educational background and healthcare is helpful. But it is important to recognize that healthcare today in the American economy reflects more jobs than manufacturing or retail, which is, again, from a healthcare standpoint is great. From an economic standpoint is a little bit scary. Nevertheless, that's what it is. We don't really have time to go through some of these things, but I do want to be sure and hit on some of the basic pieces of healthcare. As far as high tech and the Affordable Care Act, I will talk about that in just a minute when I get to actually section 2, because I've got a page of terms, and and most all of you have had a class with me before, so you know if the terms are on page 2 or 3 of the presentation, those are important to know because you may see all or most of them again on a quiz. And I'll remind you it's the same way here too, okay? Let's see, what else do we want to be sure and cover? Again, from just a cost standpoint in terms of what we spend in the U.S., we spend about $3 trillion a year on healthcare. It is 17% of our GDP, and we have the largest GDP in the world. If just healthcare was an economy, it would be the world's 5th largest economy. So again, the advantage is there's a lot of jobs. The advantage is there's a lot of research and development in it. The disadvantage is, again, the American healthcare style is we have a take a pill mentality, or we have a technology mentality. We think technology or a pill will solve everything, and it doesn't. So we don't spend as much, we don't invest as much money in helping people get healthy and helping people stay healthy. So it is an enormous industry, but sometimes we spend our money poorly. What else is here that we want to be sure and talk about? The Affordable Care Act, we'll talk about a little later on. It's the most recent piece of legislation that reflects how we provide health care in America. There are a handful of pieces that have changed since the law was passed. And we'll talk a little bit about that, at least as it relates to health technology. And then there was actually a law that was passed just before the Affordable Care Act that also has an important aspect as it relates to health informatics and health technology. What else do we want to say here? It is important to recognize the stakeholders in the American healthcare system, and stakeholders can be anywhere from anyone who has health insurance to anyone who uses the system. But to be quite honest with you, the largest stakeholders are primarily hospitals, because they're the ones that are trying to, they have grown to be very large, almost industries in and of themselves. They're enormous employers. They create substantial investment in a community. And so there's probably no larger stakeholder in the healthcare system in America than some of these very large hospitals and healthcare systems. Certainly insurance companies are large stakeholders. Professional organizations are large stakeholders. We'll talk about rural healthcare later. It is important to recognize that we continue to look for ways to fund rural healthcare, but rural healthcare is very expensive. And in many cases, even despite our best efforts, we continue to see hospitals that close in rural communities. And the lifeblood of a small community is in many cases connected to its hospital. And so when its hospital closes, they lose a distinct connection that means in many cases they may have to travel 50 miles to get to a hospital. Again, as we move to a lot of outpatient services, a lot of disconnected ER services, but lacking that small community hospital is probably the most common yet dynamic change that's going on in what we see with the American healthcare system. And as those community hospitals continue to get smaller, shrink up, and sometimes go away, they're being replaced by, again, a standalone emergency room with labs, maybe a day surgery center. But if you need to be in a hospital for several days, like in New Orleans, you'll wind up coming to New Orleans, where we have lots of very large, very good hospitals. But if you live in a rural community, there's a community north of here called Bogalusa. But if you live in rural communities, you're far less likely to have that quality of service. And in some cases, those smaller hospitals are going away. You know, the real challenge with technology is there's a cost, is there a benefit. Typically there's a benefit, but there's always a cost. We like to call it an investment because we hope there's return on investment, but the reality is it's a cost until it starts doing something good for you. When it's doing something good for you, we can call it an investment, but it's still the same amount of money. But again, how does this benefit the patient? Again, the American approach is we have a take a pill mentality. We just feel like a pill will fix everything. Keeping yourself healthy will fix a lot of things. But anyway, that's not always our approach. We continue to get older as a country. It does lead to challenges with ethical dilemmas. How much does it cost versus how much should we spend in nationalized health systems? And most first world countries have what's considered a national health system. They spend a lot of time in ethical dilemmas. In the American model, we're far more likely to spend kind of whatever it takes, which again leads to how much money we've spent in healthcare. With that, let me pivot now to what I really need to focus on anyway, and that's the key terms here in, let me back up. Can you see the presentation that says EHR, Epic, and Cerner? Is that what you see? Let me go back and look at my view to be sure the view that you were seeing. I'm sorry, let me share this screen. Okay. Now, if you'll put in the chat box, can you see EHR, Epic, and Cerner? Oh, okay. So yes now. Okay. Very good. Okay. Again, there's more than 15 electronic health record systems that have been certified that are commonly used. Actually, there's a lot more than 15, but of that more than 15, there are really 2 that are large and control more than half of the market share in America. And that is Epic and Cerner. And quite honestly, if you look at either one of them, intuitively they look very similar. If at some point in your life you used, well, if you use Google Docs right now, Google Docs and Word for Microsoft Word has a lot of similarity to it. It's not exactly the same, but it's fairly intuitive. Once you get used to a word processing program, moving over to another one is not so hard. The same way would go with Epic or Cerner or any other EHR. It's fairly intuitive, but I do want to be sure and cover the key terms. EHR is an electronic health record, okay? So when you see EHR, you need to think electronic health record. Again, huge investment. It's the cornerstone of a lot of things that go on today in a hospital. If you can master an EHR, you will go places, okay? I've worked with a number of people in the past who learned how to use the EHR system for that hospital, and it paid off very well for them down the road. So once you get hired by someone, if you have an opportunity to take additional courses on how to use the EHR at your healthcare system, it is worth your while. The other thing I'll point out is if you type in EHR, a lot of times Word and some of the other software programs will autocorrect and tell you that you meant HER, her. That's not right. You really meant EHR. So sometimes you'll type EHR, but the next thing you know, what you've got is HER. It winds up on my slides at times that way, and it winds up in documents that way. I'm just warning you in advance. A part of an EHR is an EMR, and an EMR is the medical component of the EHR. 10 years ago, we were more likely to call it an EMR, an electronic medical record. But as it expanded to more aspects of health, the big picture is an EHR. One piece of the big picture is the EMR. And actually, that's the slide that shows how those things are different. So the EHR really interfaces with the physician and clinician's EMR, laboratory data, insurance data. The PHR is the personal health record. If you're a patient for Ochsner, they give you a personal login, and you can log in and see your personal information. LCMC Health is the same way. Most of them do that the same way. And then again, EMR is primarily physicians and the hospital. But then there's also something called a PACS system in radiology. We'll talk about the PACS system later on, but just understand that an EHR ties all 6 of these things together, okay? Again, they're very expensive, but they're very important. So again, Epic and Cerner are the 2 largest EMRs or EHRs that exist. E-prescribing is a way that I can electronically, as a physician, write a prescription, and it immediately goes to whatever pharmacy you've told me to send it to. I have to send it, they'll validate it, and it transfers it over. If you've ever seen the handwriting of some physicians, e-prescribing was really a good solution for that, because again, there are some medications that look very similar, and because of handwriting problems, pharmacists have gotten the medications mixed up before because of handwriting problems. E-prescribing solved that. CPOE is computerized physician order entry. It basically means that I can dictate using either an app with voice recognition, but it can help me as a physician enter my orders for my patient. So if my patient had a heart attack, computerized physician order entry may be, I want routine cardiac orders on patient Smith in room 3. And there's something called an RCO, routine cardiac orders. What are the things that we need to do for Mr. Smith, who is in room 3? Medicare Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D. That's just a review of something you've seen before. I hope you've seen a lot before, but Medicare A is the hospital version. Medicare B is the doctor's office version, and some other things. Medicare C is the managed care version of Medicare, and Medicare D is the prescription drug benefit. To be eligible for Medicare, you have to be 65 or older. And then there's a smaller group of patients that are also eligible for Medicare who are not 65 but are disabled. And then there's a very small group of patients that have Medicare who have something called ESRD, end stage renal disease. It basically means they're on kidney dialysis. Their kidneys have failed, and every 2 days they have to go to a dialysis center, and they have really all of their blood in their body circulated through a machine to filter it out. That's normally what the kidneys do, but if the kidneys fail, that's what needs to happen. Blue Cross and Blue Shield, again, those were private, not-for-profit insurance products that emerged in the 1930s and 1940s. Blue Cross wound up being exactly what, or most, it most closely resembles Medicare A. When Medicare A was created, they replicated what Blue Cross did. Blue Cross was the hospital version of health insurance. Blue Shield was the doctor's office version of health insurance. And they had also included some other things like durable medical equipment, ambulance service, but Blue Shield is primarily things not related to the hospital. Blue Cross was primarily things related to the hospital. Well, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, the Blues existed before Medicare did, so when Medicare came along, they actually contracted with the Blues to administer the program, and Medicare A, as I say, looks very similar to Blue Cross, and Medicare B looks very similar to Blue Shield. The ARRA is the American Recovery and Reconstruction Act. ARRA was created in 2009. The American Recovery and Reconstruction Act, if we think about what happened globally in 2008, there was a financial meltdown of, and particularly in many countries, there were a lot of people who lost their homes. The economy was struggling in a lot of countries, and the American version of how to kind of kickstart the economy was to spend a significant amount of money. It was called a large stimulus package, and that large stimulus package was technically referred to as the ARRA, and a part of the ARRA included high tech. And the whole point to high tech created the reason why most hospitals, before high tech, less than 10% of American hospitals had a complete computerized electronic health record system. After high tech, first of all, they said, number one, we're going to give you some money to buy an EHR. Hospitals said, yay, I like that, give me money. The other thing the government said was, and you've got until 2017. If in 2017, between 2009 and 2017, if you don't take this little bit of money we're giving you and buy an electronic health record, you can't bill for Medicare patients, okay? So the carrot, the thing they dangled out there to say, you really need to do this, was ARRA money. And high tech was really the law that said, you've got to meaningfully use the information, and we'll see those two words again, meaningful use. Actually, those two words had changed to promoting interoperability, but you'll see meaningful use or promoting interoperability as a key piece of high tech. And high tech was basically to tell hospitals, you've got to invest money in an EHR. ARRA will give you money to invest in the electronic health record, but you got to do that. And if you don't do it by 2017, you can't bill Medicare anymore. So huge motivation to make that change. HIE is Health Information Exchange. That's a way that, and there's 2 HIEs in Louisiana. There's typically 1 to 2 to 3 in each state, but the point of an HIE, again is a health information exchange. The whole point to that is to allow some transfer of information electronically from 2 competing healthcare systems. Ochsner, as an example, and LCMC Health, as an example, both use Epic, but those are distinct competitors. They compete against each other for business. And so the HIE is one way that they can share at least some basic patient information. But HIE is Health Information Exchange. HIPAA, 1 P, 2 A's, and no O's. No O's in HIPAA. HIPAA is the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. HIPAA exists to protect the privacy of your personal health information. Something we'll later talk about is PHI, which is personal health information. And we'll also talk about NPP, the Notice of Privacy Practices. But all of those things fall up under HIPAA, and HIPAA came about in 1996. Again, you'll see a lot about HIPAA later. API is the application programming interface. An API is a way that, the best way to think about an API is when, so there's several students in this class from Fujian, China. I went to Fujian last year. Actually, I would have gone this year, but we happen to have a worldwide pandemic, so I couldn't. But last year when I went to China, at some point I needed money. How do you get money if you're in another country? Well, there was a teller machine, and I took my teller card and I stuck it in the teller machine, and I put in my personal PIN number, and I said how much money that I need, and guess what happened? I got the money. How does the teller machine in China know what teller machine, what bank is connected to this card to give me money? That system is called API. And that application programming interface allows a lot of interconnected services and systems around the world to be able to talk to each other. API is an enormous principle in how we interconnect different pieces of information. API is critical in making the web work. API is critical in me being able to sit in my office at home, and talk to you in your dorm room or your classroom or your room at home. So again, when you think about API, that's the interface system. Clinical decision making. One of the things that we see with electronic health records is something that helps us with clinical decision making. And so an example of that is artificial intelligence allows machine learning to be able to read vast amounts of information in a very short period of time. And as long as the logic is programmed well, clinical decision making may very well be supported more and more in the coming years through artificial intelligence with, again, good logic programming. But the whole point to clinical decision making is, again, it gives us standards that we can use, that we can establish in one location and share in many locations through computer technology. And then chronic versus acute, again, these are terms you've seen before, but just an example. If I'm having chest pain, I'm having pain in my left arm, I'm having pain up into my jaw, my EKG changes, I may be having a heart attack. That's a very dangerous event. It's a very significant event. That's an acute, sudden onset, okay? If I've had a heart attack, and some people, after they've had one or several heart attacks, their heart has some damage to it, and a damaged heart doesn't work as well as a healthy heart works. And so you develop a condition called congestive heart failure, where your ankles swell or fluid backs up in your lungs. But that's a chronic condition. That's a long-term condition that's secondary to something that occurred earlier. Diabetes is a chronic condition, and heart attacks, as an example, are an acute condition. If I fall down and broke my leg, that's an acute condition. If I wound up, because I broke my leg, having a long-term problem with that injury, that's a chronic condition, okay? And then the last three things are ICD-9, ICD-10, and SNOMED-CT. So SNOMED-CT, you'll see later on, it's basically a nomenclature of medicine. It's a standard set of words that allows us to translate most of the Latin-based languages with most of the Asian-based languages. But SNOMED-CT is a standardized system that allows us to interface a common set of words around the world. And when the world speaks more than 5,000 languages, SNOMED CT is very helpful in being able to do that. SNOMED CT officially stands for Systemized Nomenclature of Medicine, merged with Clinical Trials version 3, and that became SNOMED CT. Anyway, and then ICD-9 and ICD-10. ICD is the International Classification of Disease. I don't think anybody is left using ICD-9 in the world right now. ICD-10 is the most common used, but there are some countries that are test piloting ICD-11, but it's basically an international classification of disease. It converts to a number system, a way that we can code types of injury and disease. And with that, that pretty much wraps up key terms. I will tell you that the main thing that I would encourage you to do before you take a quiz, be sure and review all of the information in the presentation. This is a fairly long presentation. Again, ICD-10 and SNOMED CT, it gives you a little bit of background in that. That's a little bit more about what SNOMED CT does. The conversion between ICD-9 and ICD-10, this gives you a little bit of background on it. EHR certifications, again, there are a number of different types of certified EHRs, but there's primarily two that command more than half of the market, in at least the American market, and that's Epic and Cerner. Again, meaningful use is something we tie to high tech. We now call it promoting interoperability. What it really means is you shouldn't collect data just to collect data. You need to meaningfully use it to improve quality, reduce errors, reduce omissions, and improve health outcomes for our patients. And then I've got a couple of presentations that show you the difference between Epic and Cerner. And it shows you a couple of differences between hospitals that have converted to Epic versus Cerner. And that's basically it. At this point, let me kind of wrap up and say, I'll tell you what, let's go back to this one more time. And let me again stop sharing and share. What do I want to share? I want to share this. Okay, so the main thing I would tell you to do is to look at the terms. Again, we won't go over all of those terms this week for sure, or next week, or the next week, but you want to build your vocabulary by looking at these terms, and particularly the terms that I just highlighted. Those terms and abbreviations are important in helping you understand how we use healthcare systems. The quiz for week 1 and week 2 will reflect, again, the two presentations that we just went over the highlights of. Again, my quizzes, you typically have 2 minutes per question. That gives you ample time that you should be able to understand and figure out what the answer is. Anyway, I think that's it. And I did go 15 minutes over. That's a lot further than I should have. Let me stop and ask, do you have any questions? So I don't see anything right offhand. And if you'll put something in the chat box if you have any questions. The last thing I'll say is he's not here at the moment, but I have a fat cat. If he shows up behind me, his name's Kenny. He likes to photobomb something going on from time to time. So anyway, all he wants is food or to be petted. So other than that, I don't have anything else. We're far enough away from the hurricane that it shouldn't be a problem for us. I hope nobody is west of Lafayette who's tuning in tonight. But otherwise, anyway, I hope you have a safe night. And if you have any questions this week, be sure and let me know. I am still working for public health during the daytime, working with the pandemic between about 9 and 3. So if you need something, I may be a little slow getting back to you, but I'm up every morning very early, typically 4:30 to 5 o'clock. That's when I answer my emails. Yeah, if you send me an email at 9 o'clock at night, I'm probably in bed by then, but I will answer it the next morning, okay? And if you have a question, please let me know. If nothing else, we can meet by Zoom, or I can always answer your question by email. Anyway, I hope you have a nice evening. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next week here at the same place. Bye-bye.